Welcome back. Welcome back for another installment, the continuation of the transformation of Doña Soledad. And dare I say conclusion, I feel we're going to get through this today. We have the time, we have the energy, we have the space. So a lot of times the videos end because I'm reading and I look up and I see that the camera has stopped recording. So I've usually ran out of space and I'm running out of energy around that 20 something minute mark anyways, so it seems right on time. And we've offloaded apps, we've deleted old videos. There's space. Think we are good. But with that said, we're getting right into it today. Let's go. Today's sippy sip is some good old fashioned homegrown H2O, the base of everything. And now let us continue. The Second Ring of Power by Carlos Castaneda. As we conclude the transformation of Doña Soledad. I always want to say La Doña Soledad, but that's not how it's written anywhere. Let's go. She is like Eligio. The world no longer touches her. What did the Nahual do to her that was so special? He taught her things he never taught anyone else. He never pampered her or anything like that. He trusted her. She knows everything about everybody. The Nahual also told me everything except things about her. Maybe that's why I don't like her. The Nahual told her to be my jailer. Wherever I go, I find her. She knows whatever I do. Right now, for instance, I wouldn't be surprised if she showed up. Do you think she would? I doubt it. Tonight, the wind is with me. What is she supposed to do? Does she have a special task? I've told you enough about her. I'm afraid that if I keep on talking about her, she will notice me from wherever she is, and I don't want that to happen. Tell me then about the others. Some years after you found La Gorda, the Nahual found Eligio. He told me that he had gone with you to his homeland. Eligio came to see you because he was curious about you. The Nahual didn't notice him. He had known him since he was a kid. But one morning, as the Nahual walked to the house where you were waiting for him, he bumped into Eligio on the road. They walked together for a short distance, and then a dried piece of cholla got stuck on the tip of Eligio's left shoe. He tried to kick it loose, but its thorns were like nails. They had gone deep into the sole of the shoe. The Nahual said that Eligio pointed up to the sky with his finger and shook his foot, and the cholla came off like a bullet and went up into the air. Eligio thought it was a big joke and laughed, but the Nahual knew that he had power, although Eligio himself didn't even suspect it. That is why, with no trouble at all, he became the perfect, impeccable warrior. It was my good fortune that I got to know him. The Nahual thought that both of us were alike in one thing. Once we hook onto something, we don't let go of it. The good fortune of knowing Eligio was a fortune that I shared with no one else, not even with La Gorda. She met Eligio, but didn't really get to know him, just like yourself. The Nahual knew from the beginning that Eligio was exceptional, and he isolated him. He knew that you and the girls were on one side of the coin, and Eligio was by himself on the other side. The Nahual and Gennaro were indeed very fortunate to have found him. I first met him when the Nahual brought him over to my house. Eligio didn't get along with my girls. They hated him and feared him too, but he was thoroughly indifferent. The world didn't touch him. The Nahual didn't want you, in particular, to have much to do with Eligio. The Nahual said that you were the kind of sorcerer one should stay away from. He said that your touch doesn't soothe, it spoils instead. He told me that your spirit takes prisoners. He was somehow revolted by you, and at the same time he liked you. He said that you were crazier than Josefina when he found you, and that you still are. It was an unsettling feeling to hear someone else telling me what Don Juan thought of me. At first, I tried to disregard what Doña Soledad was saying, but then I felt utterly stupid and out of place trying to protect my ego. He bothered with you, she went on, because he was commanded by power to do so, and he, being the impeccable warrior he was, yielded to his master and gladly did what power told him to do with you. There was a pause. I was aching to ask her more about Don Juan's feelings about me. I asked her to tell me about the other girl instead. A month after he found allll, the Nahual found Rosa, she said. Rosa was the last one. Once he found her, he knew that his number was complete. How did he find her? He had gone to see Benigno in his homeland. He was approaching the house when Rosa came out from the thick bushes on the side of the road, chasing a pig that had gotten loose and was running away. The pig ran too fast for Rosa. She bumped into the Nahual and couldn't catch up with the pig. She then turned against the Nahual and began to yell at him. He made a gesture to grab her, and she was ready to fight him. She insulted him and dared him to lay a hand on her. The Nahual liked her spirit immediately, but there was no omen. The Nahual said that he waited a moment before walking away, and then the pig came running back and stood beside him. That was the omen. Rosa put a rope around the pig. The Nahual asked her point blank if she was happy in her job. She said no. She was a live-in servant. The Nahual asked her if she would go with him, and she said that if it was what she thought it was for, the answer was no. The Nahual said it was for work, and she wanted to know how much he would pay. He gave her a figure, and then she asked what kind of work it was. The Nahual said that it was to work with him in the tobacco fields of Veracruz. She told him then that she had been testing him. If he would have said he wanted her to work as a maid, she would have known that he was a liar, because he looked like someone who had never had a home in his life. The Nahual was delighted with her and told her that if she wanted to get out of the trap she was in, she should come to Benigno's house before noon. He also told her that he would wait no longer than 12. If she came, she had to be prepared for a difficult life and plenty of work. She asked him how far was the place of the tobacco fields. The Nahual said 3 days' ride in a bus. Rosa said that if it was that far, she would certainly be ready to go as soon as she got the pig back in his pen. And she did just that. She came here and everyone liked her. She was never mean or bothersome. The Nahual didn't have to force her or trick her into anything. She doesn't like me at all, and yet she takes care of me better than anyone else. I trust her, and yet I don't like her at all. And when I leave, I will miss her the most. Can you beat that? I saw a flicker of sadness in her eyes. I could not sustain my distrust. She wiped her eyes with a casual movement of her hand. There was a natural break in the conversation at that point. It was getting dark by then, and writing was very difficult. Besides, I had to go to the bathroom. She insisted that I use the outhouse before she did, as the Nahual himself would have done. Afterward, she brought 2 round tubs the size of a child's bathtub, filled them half full with warm water, and added some green leaves after mashing them thoroughly with her hands. She told me in an authoritative tone to wash myself in one of the tubs, while she did the same in the other. The water had an almost perfumed smell. It caused a ticklish sensation. It felt like a mild menthol on my face and arms. We went back to her room. She put my writing gear, which I had left on her bed, on top of one of her chests of drawers. The windows were open and there was still light. It must have been close to 7. Doña Soledad lay on her back. She was smiling at me. I thought that she was the picture of warmth. But at the same time, and in spite of her smile, her eyes gave out a feeling of ruthlessness and unbending force. I asked her how long she had been with Don Juan and his woman or apprentice. She made fun of my cautiousness in labeling her. Her answer was 7 years. She reminded me then that I had not seen her for 5. I had been convinced up to that point that I had seen her 2 years before. I tried to remember the last time, but I could not. She told me to lie down next to her. I knelt on the bed by her side. In a very soft voice, she asked me if I was afraid. I said no. which was the truth. There in her room at that moment, I was being confronted by an old response of mine, which had manifested itself countless times, a mixture of curiosity and suicidal indifference. Almost in a whisper, she said that she had to be impeccable with me and tell me that our meeting was crucial for both of us. She said that the Nahual had given her direct and detailed orders of what to do. As she talked, I could not help laughing at her tremendous effort to sound like Don Juan. I listened to her statements and could predict what she would say next. Suddenly, she sat up. Her face was a few inches from mine. I could see her white teeth shining in the semi-darkness of the room. She put her arms around me in an embrace and pulled me on top of her. My mind was very clear, and yet something was leading me deeper and deeper into a sort of morass. I was experiencing myself as something I had no conception of. Suddenly, I knew that I had somehow been feeling her feelings all along. She was the strange one. She had mesmerized me with words. She was a cold, old woman, and her designs were not those of youth and vigor. In spite of her vitality and strength, I knew then that Don Juan had not turned her head in the same direction as mine. That thought would have been ridiculous in any other context. Nonetheless, at that moment, I took it as a true insight. A feeling of alarm swept through my body. I wanted to get out of her bed, but there seemed to be an extraordinary force around me that kept me fixed, incapable of moving away. I was paralyzed. She must have felt my realization. All of a sudden, she pulled the band that tied her hair, and in one swift movement, she wrapped it around my neck. I felt the tension of the band on my skin, but somehow it did not seem real. Don Juan had always said to me that our great enemy is the fact that we never believe what is happening to us. At the moment, Doña Soledad was wrapping the cloth like a noose around my throat. I knew what he meant. But even after I had had that intellectual reflection, my body did not react. I remained flaccid, almost indifferent to what seemed to be my death. I felt the exertion of her arms and shoulders as she tightened the band around my neck. She was choking me with great force and expertise. I began to gasp. Her eyes stared at me with a maddening glare. I knew then that she intended to kill me. Tren. Don Juan had said that when we finally realize what is going on, it is usually too late to turn back. He contended that it is intellect that fools us, because it receives the message first. But rather than giving it credence and acting on it immediately, it dallies with it instead. I heard then, or perhaps I felt, a snapping sound at the base of my neck, right behind my windpipe. I knew that she had cracked my neck. My ears buzzed and then they tingled. I experienced an exceptional clarity of hearing. I thought that I must be dying. I loathed my incapacity to do anything to defend myself. I could not even move a muscle to kick her. I was unable to breathe anymore. My body shivered, and suddenly I stood up and was free, out of her deadly grip. I looked down on the bed. I seemed to be looking down from the ceiling. I saw my body, motionless and limp, on top of hers. I saw horror in her eyes. I wanted her to let go of the noose. I had a fit of wrath for having been so stupid and hit her smack on the forehead with my fist. She shrieked and held her head and then passed out. But before she did, I caught a fleeting glimpse of a phantasmagoric scene. I saw Doña Soledad being hurled out of the bed by the force of my blow. I saw her running toward the wall and huddling up against it like a frightened child. The next impression I had was of having a terrible difficulty in breathing. My neck hurt. My throat seemed to have dried up so intensely that I could not swallow. It took me a long time to gather enough strength to get up. I then examined Doña Soledad. She was lying unconscious on the bed. She had an enormous red lump on her forehead. I got some water and splashed it on her face, the way Don Juan had always done with me. When she regained consciousness, I made her walk, holding her by the armpits. She was soaked in perspiration. I applied towels with cold water on her forehead. She threw up, and I was almost sure she had a brain concussion. She was shivering. I tried to pile clothes and blankets over her for warmth, but she took off all of her clothes and turned her body to face the wind. She asked me to leave her alone and said that if the wind changed direction, it would be a sign that she was going to get well. She held my hand in a sort of brief handshake and told me that it was fate that had pitted us against each other. I think one of us was supposed to die tonight, she said. Don't be silly. You're not finished yet, I said, and really meant it. Something made me feel confident that she was all right. I went outside, picked up a stick, and walked to my car. The dog growled. He was still curled up on the seat. I told him to get out. He meekly jumped out. There was something different about him. I saw his enormous shape trotting away in the semi-darkness. He went to his corral. I was free. I sat in the car for a moment to deliberate. No, I was not free. Something was pulling me back into the house. I had unfinished business there. I was no longer afraid of Doña Soledad. In fact, an extraordinary indifference had taken possession over me. I felt that she had given me, deliberately or unconsciously, a supremely important lesson. Under the horrendous pressure of her attempt to kill me, I had actually acted upon her from a level that would have been inconceivable under normal circumstances. I had nearly been strangled. Something in that confounded room of hers had rendered me helpless, and yet I had extricated myself. I could not imagine what had happened. Perhaps it was as Don Juan had always maintained, that all of us have an extra potential, something which is there but rarely gets to be used. I had actually hit Doña Soledad from a phantom position. I took my flashlight from the car, went back into the house, lit all the kerosene lanterns I could find, and sat down at the table in the front room to write. Working relaxed me. Toward dawn, Doña Soledad stumbled out of her room. She could hardly keep her balance. She was completely naked. She became ill and collapsed by the door. I gave her some water and tried to cover her with a blanket. She refused it. I became concerned with the possibility of her losing body heat. She muttered that she had to be naked if she expected the wind to cure her. She made a plaster of mashed leaves, applied it to her forehead, and fixed it in place with her turban. She wrapped a blanket around her body and came to the table where I was writing and sat down facing me. Her eyes were red. She looked truly sick. There is something I must tell you, she said in a weak voice. The Nahual set me up to wait for you. I had to wait even if it took 20 years. He gave me instructions on how to entice you and steal your power. He knew that sooner or later you had to come to see Pablito and Nestor. So he told me to use that opportunity to bewitch you and take everything you have. The Nahual said that if I lived an impeccable life, my power would bring you here when there would be no one else in the house. My power did that. Today, you came when everybody was gone. My impeccable life had helped me. All that was left for me to do was to take your power and then kill you. Why would you want to do such a horrible thing? Because I need your power for my own journey. The Nahual had to set it up that way. You had to be the one. After all, I really don't know you. You mean nothing to me. So why shouldn't I take something I need so desperately from someone who doesn't count at all? Those were the Nahual's very words. Why would the Nahual want to hurt me? You yourself said that he worried about me. What I've done to you tonight has nothing to do with what he feels for you or myself. This is only between the two of us. There have been no witnesses to what took place today. between the two of us, because both of us are part of the Nahual himself. But you, in particular, have received and kept something of him that I don't have, something that I need desperately, the special power that he gave you. The Nahual said that he had given something to each of his children. I can't reach Eligio. I can't take it from my girls. So that leaves you as my prey. I made the power the Nahual gave me grow, and in growing it changed my body. You made your power grow too. I wanted that power from you, and for that I had to kill you. The Nahual said that even if you didn't die, you would fall under my spell and become my prisoner for life if I wanted it so. Either way, your power was going to be mine. But how could my death benefit you? Not your death, but your power. I did it because I need a boost. Without it, I will have a hellish time on my journey. I don't have enough guts. That's why I dislike La Gorda. She's young and has plenty of guts. I'm old and have second thoughts and doubts. If you want to know the truth, the real struggle is between Pablito and myself. He is my mortal enemy, not you. The Nahual said that your power could make my journey easier and help me get what I need. How on earth can Pablito be your enemy? When the Nahual changed me, he knew what would eventually happen. First of all, he set me up so my eyes would face the north, and although you and my girls are the same, I am the opposite of you people. I go in a different direction. Pablito, Nestor, and Benigno are with you. The direction of their eyes is the same as yours. All of you will go together toward Yucatan. Pablito is my enemy, not because his eyes were set in the opposite direction, but because he is my son. This is what I had to tell you, even though you don't know what I am talking about. I have to enter into the other world, where the Nahual is now, where Gennaro and Eligio are now, even if I have to destroy Pablito to do that. What are you saying, Doña Soledad? You're crazy. No, I am not. There is nothing more important for us living beings than to enter into that world. I will tell you that, for me, that is true. To get to that world, I live the way the Nahual taught me. Without the hope of that world, I am nothing. Nothing. I was a fat old cow. Now, that hope gives me a guide, a direction, and even if I can't take your power, I still have my purpose. She rested her head on the table, using her arms as a pillow. The force of her statements had numbed me. I had not understood what exactly she had meant, but I could almost empathize with her plea, although it was the strangest thing I had yet heard from her that night. Her purpose was a warrior's purpose, in Don Juan style and terminology. I never knew, however, that one had to destroy people in order to fulfill it. She lifted up her head and looked at me with half-closed eyelids. At the beginning, everything worked fine for me today, she said. I was a bit scared when you drove up. I had waited years for that moment. The Nahual told me that you like women. He said you were an easy prey for them, so I played you for a quick finish. I figured that you would go for it. The Nahual had taught me how I should grab you at the moment when you are the weakest. I was leading you to that moment with my body, but you became suspicious. I was too clumsy. I had taken you to my room, as the Nahual told me to do, so the lines of my floor would entrap you and make you helpless. But you fooled my floor by liking it and by watching its lines intently. It had no power as long as your eyes were on its lines. Your body knew what to do. Then you scared my floor, yelling the way you did. Sudden noises like that are deadly, especially the voice of a sorcerer. The power of my floor died out like a flame. I knew it, but you didn't. You were about to leave then, so I had to stop you. The Nahual had shown me how to use my hand to grab you. I tried to do that, but my power was low. My floor was scared. Your eyes had numbed its lines. No one else has ever laid eyes on them. So I failed in my attempt to grab your neck. You got out of my grip before I had time to squeeze you. I knew then that you were slipping away, and I tried one final attack. I used the key the Nahual said would affect you the most, fright. I frightened you with my shrieks, and that gave me enough power to subdue you. I thought I had you, but my stupid dog got excited. He's stupid and knocked me off of you when I had you almost under my spell. As I see it now, perhaps my dog was not so stupid after all. Maybe he noticed your double and charged against it, but knocked me over instead. You said he wasn't your dog. I lied. He was my trump card. The Nahual taught me that I should always have a trump card, an unsuspected trick. Somehow, I knew that I might need my dog. When I took you to see my friend, it was really him. The coyote is my girl's friend. I wanted my dog to sniff you. When you ran into the house, I had to be rough with him. I pushed him inside your car, making him yell with pain. He's too big and could hardly fit over the seat. I told him right then to maul you to shreds. I knew that if you had been badly bitten by my dog, you would have been helpless and I could have finished you off without any trouble. You escaped again, but you couldn't leave the house. I knew then that I had to be patient and wait for the darkness. Then the wind changed direction and I was sure of my success. The Nahual had told me that he knew without a doubt that you would like me as a woman. It was a matter of waiting for the right moment. The Nahual said that you would kill yourself once you realized I had stolen your power. But in case I failed to steal it, or in case you didn't kill yourself, or in case I didn't want to keep you alive as my prisoner, I should then use my headband to choke you to death. He even showed me the place where I had to throw your carcass, a bottomless pit, a crack in the mountains, not too far from here, where goats always disappear. The Nahual never mentioned your awesome side, though. I've told you that one of us was supposed to die tonight. I didn't know it was going to be me. The Nahual gave me the feeling that I would win. How cruel of him not to tell me everything about you. Think of me, Doña Soledad. I knew even less than you did. It's not the same. The Nahual prepared me for years for this. I knew every detail. You were in my bag. The Nahual even showed me the leaves I should always keep fresh and handy to make you numb. I put them in the tub as if they were for fragrance. You didn't even notice that I used another kind of leaf for my tub. You fell for everything I had prepared for you. And yet your awesome side won in the end. What do you mean, my awesome side? The one that hit me and will kill me tonight? Your horrendous double that came out to finish me? I will never forget it, and if I live, which I doubt, I will never be the same. Did it look like me? It was you, of course, but not as you look now. I can't really say what it looked like. When I want to think about it, I get dizzy. I told her about my fleeting perception that she had left her body with the impact of my blow. I intended to prod her with the account. It seemed to me that the reason behind the whole event had been to force us to draw from sources that are ordinarily barred to us. I had positively given her a dreadful blow. I had caused profound damage to her body, and yet I could not have done it myself. I did feel I had hit her with my left fist. The enormous red lump on her forehead attested to that. Yet I had no swelling in my knuckles, or the slightest pain, or discomfort in them. A blow of that magnitude could even have broken my hand. Upon hearing my description of how I had seen her huddling against the wall, she became thoroughly desperate. I asked her if she had had any inkling of what I had seen, such as a sensation of leaving her body or a fleeting perception of the room. I know now that I am doomed, she said. Very few survive the touch of the double. If my soul has left already, I won't survive. I'll get weaker and weaker until I die. Her eyes had a wild glare. She raised herself and seemed to be on the verge of striking me, but she slumped back. "You've taken my soul," she said. "You must have it in your pouch now. Why did you have to tell me, though?" I swore to her that I had had no intentions of hurting her, that I had acted in whatever form only in self-defense, and therefore I bore no malice toward her. "If you don't have my soul in your pouch, it's even worse," she said. "It must be roaming aimlessly around. I will never get it back then." Doña Soledad seemed to be void of energy. Her voice became weaker. I wanted her to go and lie down. She refused to leave the table. "The Nahual said that if I failed completely, I should then give you his message," she said. "He told me to tell you that he had replaced your body a long time ago. You are himself now." "What did he mean by that?" "He's a sorcerer. He entered into your old body and replaced its luminosity. Now you shine like the Nahual himself. You're not your father's son anymore. You are the Nahual himself." Doña Soledad stood up. She was groggy. She appeared to want to say something else, but had trouble vocalizing. She walked to her room. I helped her to the door, but she did not want me to enter. She dropped the blanket that covered her and lay down on her bed. She asked in a very soft voice if I would go to a hill a short distance away and watch from there to see if the wind was coming. She added in a most casual manner that I should take her dog with me. Somehow, her request did not sound right. I said that I would climb up on the roof and look from there. She turned her back to me and said that the least I could do for her was to take her dog to the hill so that he could lure the wind. I became very irritated with her. Her room in the darkness gave out a most eerie feeling. I went into the kitchen and got 2 lanterns and brought them back with me. At the sight of the light, she screamed hysterically. I let out a yell myself, but for a different reason. When the light hit the room, I saw the floor curled up like a cocoon around her bed. My perception was so fleeting that the next instant I could have sworn that the shadow of the wire protective masks of the lanterns had created that ghastly scene. My phantom perception made me furious. I shook her by the shoulders. She wept like a child and promised not to try any more of her tricks. I placed the lanterns on the chest of drawers and she fell asleep instantly. By mid-morning, the wind had changed. I felt a strong gust coming through the north window. Around noon, Doña Soledad came out again. She seemed a bit wobbly. The redness in her eyes had disappeared and the swelling of her forehead had diminished. There was hardly any visible lump. I felt that it was time for me to leave. I told her that, although I had written down the message that she had given me from Don Juan, it did not clarify anything. "You're not your father's son anymore. You are now the Nahual himself," she said. There was something truly incongruous about me. A few hours before, I had been helpless, and Doña Soledad had actually tried to kill me. But at that moment, when she was speaking to me, I had forgotten the horror of that event. And yet, there was another part of me that could spend days mulling over meaningless confrontations with people concerning my personality or my work. That part seemed to be the real me, the me that I had known all my life. The me, however, who had gone through a bout with death that night and then forgotten about it, was not real. It was me, and yet it was not. In the light of such incongruities, Don Juan's claims seemed to be less far-fetched, but still unacceptable. Doña Soledad seemed absent-minded. She smiled peacefully. "Oh, there they are," she said suddenly. "How fortunate for me. My girls are here. Now they'll take care of me." She seemed to have had a turn for the worse. She looked as strong as ever, but her behavior was more disassociated. My fears mounted. I did not know whether to leave her there or take her to a hospital in the city several hundred miles away. All of a sudden, she jumped up like a little child and ran out the front door and down the driveway toward the main road. Her dog ran after her. I hurriedly got in my car in order to catch up with her. I had to drive down the path in reverse since there was no space to turn around. As I approached the road, I saw through the back window that Doña Soledad was surrounded by 4 young women. Fascinating. And that concludes part 1 of the second ring of power, the transformation of Doña Soledad. And oh my goodness, right? Okay, so much happened. I'm going to splice this all together and have one just full audio to listen to it all as one part. But I'm excited to get to the little sisters. Part 2, the little sisters. Hope you'll come back and join us for more. I'm excited. I've already forgotten. I think it was pretty intense too. And then after that, it's La Gorda. In any case, thanks for being here. We'll see you for part 2. Well, part 1, more than likely, of part 2